Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me. I never believed a pen could feel heavier than a hammer until the morning my father's will was read. The sleek black Mont Blanc on the polished walnut table might as well have been a judge's gavel waiting to fall. It smelled like leather, old paper, and the kind of certainty I hadn't felt since I was 10, and Dad taught me how to shake a man's hand without flinching. My name is Aaron Cole. I'm 32. My father, Richard Rick Cole, built a commercial real estate empire out of nothing but grit and a ledger. 40 years, 27 towers, and an ocean of sleepless nights later, he had a reputation you could lean your back against. He also had a second wife with a smile like a blade, Vanessa. She sat across from me in black silk, pearls, and satisfaction. One leg crossed over the other, heel tapping the air like a clock. She didn't wear grief. She wore expectation. The room seemed to lean toward her the way lesser rooms lean toward money. "Don't set yourself up for disappointment, Aaron," she murmured, not bothering to lower her voice. "Your father valued loyalty. He knew who had his back in the end." I didn't look at her. I looked at the pen. The lawyer, Mr. Sterling, a tall man whose glasses caught the light like a quiet alarm, cleared his throat. Beside me, Uncle James sat with his shoulder squared toward mine like a wall. 2 chairs down, my mother, Karen, folded her hands and stared at Vanessa with the kind of calm that makes wolves blink first. "I'll begin," Sterling said. He worked through the preface. Charitable bequests, donations to the scholarship fund in Dad's name, 10,000 here to a longtime driver, a vintage watch to an old partner. Vanessa's lips kept the faintest smile, the sort of curve that tells you a map has already been drawn and you are not on it. I remembered the first time she walked into our lives, when I was 15, and Dad thought moving on meant bringing a storm into the house and teaching it to smile. Vanessa was beautiful in the way neon is beautiful, bright enough to make you miss the dark. She was also 32 at the time, 20 years younger than my father, and exactly 0 years interested in being any part of my history. "Your father works hard for a certain image, Aaron," she said once, scanning the thrift store jacket Mom had found me. "Try not to clash with it." Dad missed things. He caught bigger ones. That was always the danger with men who build. Sometimes they see skylines and miss kitchen tables. Still, every time I tasted the bitterness of her voice, he'd pull me aside, rest 2 fingers on my shoulder and say, "Stand up straight, son. People shoot at targets that crouch." The lawyer turned a page. Vanessa's heel tapping stopped. "To my wife, Vanessa Cole," Sterling read, "I leave the personal contents of our residence on Hawthorne Drive. A lifetime right to reside in said residence, and a designated allowance of $180,000 per annum, paid quarterly from the family trust." Vanessa's smile froze, just enough to see the bone beneath it. 180,000 was comfort. It was not control. "And the bulk of the estate?" she asked, even though she knew the rules of the room prohibited interruptions. Sterling looked up over the rim of his glasses. "Mrs. Cole, if I may proceed." My heartbeat found a higher gear. I told my face to stay still. Uncle James breathed in slowly, the old boxer in him measuring distance and angle. My mother didn't move at all. That was her way of bracing. Quiet, still, unbreakable. Sterling turned one more page. "The remainder of the estate, including all business holdings, real estate assets, partnership interests, cash, and marketable securities, shall pass into the Cole Legacy Trust, to be administered by the named trustee, with control, voting rights, and beneficiary privileges granted to my son, Aaron Michael Cole, upon satisfaction of the conditions outlined in Appendix C. I didn't hear the next breath I took. The room did. Vanessa blinked hard. "Conditions?" she said. And there it was. The first crack. Sterling slid a thin stack from the folder, crisp paper whispering like autumn. Mr. Cole amended his will 3 months prior to his passing. He also executed a letter of wishes and an appendix, Appendix C, containing 3 clauses. I looked down at my hands. For years I had watched my father put conditions on everything that mattered. He didn't believe in handing people ladders. He taught them to build rungs. If this was his final lesson, it was going to cut. Clause 1, Sterling read. Within 30 days of execution, my son shall elect either A, an immediate distribution of $10 million in cash and surrender of all voting control in Cole Development Group, or B, no distribution, full voting control, and stewardship of the company, assets and obligations as defined in Article 9. Vanessa leaned back, stunned for half a second before recovering. She turned her eyes to me like a dealer offering a card she knew you couldn't refuse. 10 million cash to walk away. Or everything, with the weight that came with it. Clause 2, Sterling continued. Within 60 days, my son shall convene a special meeting of the Board of Cole Development Group and present a 3-year plan for debt management, workforce retention, and ethical compliance. The board shall vote confidence or no confidence. A no-confidence vote triggers the appointment of the trustee as interim steward, with my son retaining beneficiary status but not control. My father was speaking from the grave, and I could hear his voice between the lines. Earn the keys. Don't borrow them. Clause 3, Sterling said, quieter now. My son shall demonstrate character consistent with the name he carries. Examples of disqualifying conduct include retaliatory misappropriation, self-dealing, attempts to displace protected dependents, or conduct unbecoming the role and responsibilities herein. Protected dependents. Vanessa's eyes sharpened. She knew what that phrase meant. She was entitled to dignity and comfort, not power. But if I tried to throw her out of Hawthorne Drive or starve her allowance, I'd trigger the trapdoor under my own feet. Sterling set the papers down. Mr. Cole appended a letter to be read privately to his son. We can conclude the formal reading or pause if you wish to review it now. Vanessa laughed without mirth. This is ridiculous. Michael would never. Uncle James turned his head so slowly it could have cut glass. He would. He did. I took the letter. The envelope was heavy cream. My name written in the slanted handwriting that signed every one of my birthday cards, with a note about how I should pay my taxes before I spent a dime. My fingers hesitated at the flap. Read it, Mom said softly. I broke the seal. Son, if the lawyer is speaking and you're reading this, it means I'm not in the room to stop you from doing something stupid with your face. Keep it calm. Breathe through your nose. I had to smile. Dad had a way of teasing his way into my posture. You'll be offered a shortcut. 10 million looks like a shortcut. It isn't. It's an exit. Take it only if you decide you were meant to be a guest in your own name. My throat tightened. I knew what Vanessa was. I also knew what she wasn't. She was not going to grow what I planted. She is comfortable with comfort. You, son, are uncomfortable with it. That's good. It means you look for the work behind the finish. Do not punish anyone to prove a point. Vanessa is entitled to dignity, not dominion. Keep your word even if it tastes like metal. Meet the board. Listen before you speak. Bring numbers, not noise. There's a hard file you'll need. Ask Sterling for the blue folder. Don't open it in front of anyone. Call James when you do. You'll be alone in a room where everyone claims to know your father. None of them do. If you want to know me, look at how I treated the man who cleaned the elevators at midnight. He has a pension. The board fought me on it for 6 months. Take care of the people who can't swing at you. They are your measure. You carry my name. Don't protect it with your mouth. Protect it with your spine. Dad. When I set the letter down, my cheeks were dry, but my hands weren't steady. Vanessa was watching me like a cat watches a closed door, already imagining what she'd do once it opened. So, she asked, bright and poisonous, will it be the 10 million, Aaron? You could buy a very nice little company with that. Maybe a lakeside house for Karen. You've always liked smaller things. Mom didn't flinch. Uncle James exhaled once and let the room take it. I'll take control, I said. The words landed in my ribs like a hammer I chose to carry. Vanessa's smile vanished. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have a sentence ready. Mr. Sterling, I said, what's the blue folder? He slid open a drawer, took out a worn navy file with a brass clasp and set it in front of me. Per your father's instruction, this is for you alone. I put my hand on it without opening it. The paper felt warm from the drawer. My father's voice felt closer with my palm there, as if he were waiting until I reached a room with a locked door. We're done here, I said. Vanessa stood so quickly her chair protested. We are not. Aaron, this company, this house, this life. You really think you know how to hold any of it? No, I said. But I know how to learn, and I know how to keep my word. She laughed, high and brittle. Your word? Your father's empire was built on relationships you don't have. Investors, lenders, a board who barely tolerates you when you wear a tie. You think they'll roll over because your name is on a letterhead? I'm not asking anyone to roll over, I said. I'm asking them to show up, just like I will. Her eyes flicked to my mother. Of course he'll keep your little cottage, Karen. He's generous. He always was, when it wasn't his money. Mom's smile was small and lethal. I taught him what doesn't belong to him. He learned. Can you say the same? Uncle James put a fingertip on my elbow. Let's go, kid. We walked out, blue folder in my hand like a hot coal. In the corridor, Sterling caught up and put a key in my palm. Your father rekeyed the executive suite before, well, this opens the office, the safe, and the server cabinet. He also registered a private P.O. box. The number is in the folder. He hesitated. Mr. Cole, your father's last 3 months were full of preparations. He assumed you would need proof. Proof of what? I asked. Of anything you can't say without it, Sterling said, and for the first time all morning, I saw the corner of a smile touch his mouth. I'll see you at the board meeting. I nodded. When? He glanced at his calendar. He penciled one. 8 days. Of course he did. I opened the blue folder alone, at my father's desk, while the city knocked sunlight against 30 floors of glass and steel. His chair still held the shape of his back. His paperweight, a chunk of black stone with gold flecks, still anchored the corner of the blotter. I half expected him to step in and tell me I was sitting in the wrong chair. The folder's first page was a ledger, my father's handwriting in precise lines. Vendor names, unusual sums, dates that looked wrong. A company I didn't recognize, Nexus West Holdings, appeared and reappeared like a shadow. The totals were ugly. 7 figures funneled to an LLC with no portfolio. Invoices with phrases like advisory services and facilitation fee. Taped to the inside cover was a single Polaroid photograph. Vanessa, shaking hands with a man wearing a watch I recognized from a business magazine profile about distressed asset raiders. The photo was stamped in red, security, no distribution. Beneath it, my father had written in black ink, "Keep the roof on until you have the nails in your hand." The next pages were receipts, wire confirmations, emails printed out, calendar invites to private dinners that coincided with large transfers to Nexus West. And then a thumb drive in a small envelope, labeled in my father's script. Sound bites the board will understand. My pulse went bright in my neck. I called Uncle James. He arrived 20 minutes later with a grease-stained baseball cap and the look he wore before a fight, when he still thought a conversation might save somebody's teeth. "What's in the box?" he asked. "Proof," I said, "and a map." We worked the folder until our eyes burned. Nexus West was a shell favorite of a private equity firm known for buying companies by starving them first. Someone had been feeding them inside information and sweetheart contracts. Contracts that bled coal development under the pleasant term of consulting. The signatory on several advisory agreements wasn't my father. It was Vanessa. I pushed back from the desk. The city glittered, indifferent. My father had been dying, and the people closest to him had been measuring curtains. I didn't know if he knew all of it. The folder suggested he did. He hadn't moved because he was building a case. "He gave you the match," Uncle James said, tapping the thumb drive. "Now don't light the wrong house with it." "I have 8 days," I said. "You have 8 days to show them you're not a temper, you're a plan." Day 1, I visited sites. No speeches. I walked floors with superintendents and asked about delays, subs, and the one thing no executive ever asks for, the truth. Once a man sees you're not afraid to hear it, he'll hand you the thing you need more than applause: data. Day 2, I met lenders. No lunches. Conference rooms with stale coffee and spreadsheets. I didn't promise what I couldn't deliver. I brought a debt calendar and the things we could move. Day 3, I sat with HR. We combed policies that looked like wallpaper. My father's note echoed in my skull. Take care of the people who can't swing at you. We mapped severance triggers so no one would be blindsided by someone else's bonus. Day 4. I visited the janitorial team's break room at midnight and shook the hand of a man named Jorge, who said, "Your father remembered my daughter's name every Christmas." I wrote it down so I would too. Day 5. I ran numbers until they stopped scaring me. The thumb drive sat on the desk like a sleeping animal. I didn't wake it. Day 6. I told my mother I wasn't moving her. She looked relieved and insulted at the same time. "I don't need a bigger house to feel like your mother," she said. "I need to know you won't turn into money with shoes." Day 7. At dawn, I drove to Hawthorne Drive. Vanessa opened the door wearing white like it was armor. "Working on your image?" she asked, eyes sliding past me toward the street. "Or are you hoping the neighbors see you kept your promise not to throw me out?" "I don't break promises," I said. even when I want to." She laughed. "You think your father's little morality play makes you strong. It doesn't. It makes you predictable. I didn't get where I am by loving rules. You got where you are by loving mirrors," I said, and something dark crossed her face for half a second before the smile returned. "Did you know your father cried?" she said suddenly. "Once, in the kitchen. The night he changed his will. He said he was disappointed." The word hit like a fist I hadn't seen. She saw it land and brightened. He hated weakness. He hated mistakes. He hated lost time. He told me he couldn't trust you with it. I felt the floor shift under my feet, just an inch, just enough to make a man put his hand on a wall. Uncle James's voice from another room in my memory. "She aims for the bruise." "You can say anything you want," I said finally. "But you can't sign what isn't yours anymore." She leaned in. "You have no idea what I can sign." She shut the door. I stood on the step and let the cold air cut my lungs into clean pieces. I looked at the oaks lining the street my father loved for their order. My hand closed around the key in my pocket and felt like a promise. Day 8. I took the elevator to the boardroom at Cole Development Group with a binder under my arm, a knot in my tie I tied twice, and my father's thumb drive burning a pocket in my briefcase. Sterling stood at the end of the glossy table, a neutral expression on his face. The board members filtered in, their watches, shoes, and expressions all calibrated to send messages about their appetite for power. At the far end, Vanessa slipped into a chair she had no right to be in, but everyone was too polite or too scared to say it. Where there is money, there is always a seat for someone who can set a room on fire. I set my binder on the table. The city glittered far below, the way cities do when they don't care who falls. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, hearing my father's cadence in my own mouth and refusing to trip over it. "Thank you for coming. I'll be brief." You could feel the question move around the table like a tide. Can he hold the floor? "I'm not going to sell you on a personality. You knew my father. You don't know me. I'll change that with numbers." I opened to page 1. Debt schedule, cash flow. 3 projects paused, 2 primed, 1 bleeding. Line items with dates for suppliers I had shaken hands with 48 hours earlier. The plan was simple and hard. Sell 2 non-core assets, extend maturities on the Anaheim deal, pause bonus accruals for executives for 2 quarters, protect the rank and file, and renegotiate the janitorial contract without touching pensions. "Why protect pensions?" a board member, Dawson, gray hair and a dentist's smile, asked. "It's an easy cut." "Because your definition of easy says everything about whether you build for 5 years or 50, I said. "People notice what we do when we don't need to." A woman at the table, Nguyen, whose vote had swayed 3 decisions last year, tilted her head. She was listening. Vanessa's nails tapped once. "How inspiring," she said. "Do you also have a plan for the half-dozen advisory contracts your father signed in his last year to keep this ship afloat?" I met her eyes. "I do." I slid a paper across, one of the Nexus West invoices. "These are not advisory contracts," I said. "They are siphons. And they did not protect the company, they bled it." Silence pressed the room. "Baseless," Vanessa snapped. "You don't even know what you're holding." "I know who signed them," I said, and lifted the page so the board could see the signature block. "Not my father's, hers." A low hum moved like a current. Dawson glanced at Sterling. Nguyen's gaze slid to the paper and stuck there. "You'll say he authorized it," I said. "Maybe he did. But authorization isn't the same as wisdom. And either way, we won't fix the next year by pretending last year didn't happen. I set the paper down. I didn't reach for the thumb drive, not yet. I'd brought a map, but I didn't need an explosion to make my point. Here's the plan, I said. We unwind Nexus West in 90 days. We notify all counterparties we are reviewing advisory contracts for arm's-length compliance. We ask lenders for 6 months of interest only on the Anaheim maturity in exchange for new personal capital in the form of, I swallowed, my $10 million distribution. Heads lifted. Vanessa's eyes widened the way a predator's widens when the prey runs toward it. I'm declining the cash. I'm converting it to a mezzanine note behind our senior lenders for the Anaheim project. It buys us oxygen and tells everyone in this room what side of the table I'm on. The room changed color. Nguyen set her pen down. You'd risk $10 million to keep this company upright? No, I said, and let the word hang long enough to make a pulse tick. I'd invest $10 million. My father taught me the difference. Sterling folded his hands. You could hear the decision forming around the table like frost. Dawson cleared his throat. And the third clause, character? How are we to measure that? I'll make it easy, I said. Measure me by how I treat the people who don't have a vote. The boardroom door opened. The man who stepped in was middle-aged, wearing a gray work shirt with his name stitched on it. Jorge. He looked at me, then at the table full of suits, his hand trembling just enough to see it. I asked him to come, I said, before Dawson could speak. He cleaned our elevators at midnight for 15 years. My father told him not to worry about his daughter's tuition when she got sick. Then the company cut overtime last year and he lost the extra cash that made the difference. That's a number 2. Jorge swallowed. Mr. Cole promised. He kept it. Even when people told him not to. Vanessa stood. This is theater, she hissed. Michael would never. Michael wrote it down, Sterling said, and the calm in his voice sounded like a verdict. He looked at the board. You've heard the plan. You've seen the posture. We can decide in open session. Vanessa rounded the table. I will not be sidelined by you already were, I said, too quietly for anyone but her to hear. 3 months ago. He did that, not me. She stared at me long enough to say everything she couldn't out loud. Then she sank back into her chair like it had betrayed her. Sterling called the vote. One by one, hands lifted. Confidence, Nguyen said. Dawson hesitated. His eyes moved to Vanessa, then to my binder, then to Sterling. The world is full of men who want to be brave after someone else jumps first. He raised his hand. Confidence. I didn't exhale until the last hand rose. Motion carries, Sterling said. Control remains with Mr. Cole. Vanessa's laugh was a broken plate. You think this is over? You haven't even opened all the doors you don't see. I almost reached for the thumb drive then. I didn't. Meeting adjourned, Sterling said. As the room emptied, Vanessa stayed planted like a tree that refused to believe the forest was moving. I gathered my binder and turned to go. She spoke just as I reached the door. He cried because of you, she said, low and poisonous. He said you wasted his time. I wanted to turn. I wanted to take the thumb drive and fill the room with the voice recordings my father had collected. Conversations she thought were private, dates and deals that would have made the board gasp. I wanted to end her. I heard my father's voice. Do not punish anyone to prove a point. I looked over my shoulder, not at Vanessa, but at the window, the city, and the faint reflection of a man who wasn't crouching. If he cried, I said, it's because he knew he was leaving, and he wasn't done teaching. I wanted it in. I walked out with the thumb drive still in my pocket. When the boardroom emptied, I sat alone under the buzzing light, the city stretching below like a grid of choices. For years I had wanted Vanessa to pay. Now the weight on my chest wasn't victory, it was duty. The thumb drive still lay in my briefcase. It held enough evidence to bury her, but also enough to stain my father's name. If I released it, headlines would follow, shareholders would circle, and his empire would become gossip. If I buried it, she might crawl back with lawyers. I thought of Dad's letter. Keep your word even if it tastes like metal. That night I didn't sleep. The morning after Sterling called. Congratulations, Mr. Cole. The confidence vote is official. Your interim CEO pending next quarter's confirmation. Interim? I said. He chuckled softly. Even legacies need to earn their permanence. I hung up and drove to the Hawthorne property again. Not to argue, just to see what my father had left behind. Vanessa's car was gone. The curtains were half drawn. Through the glass I could see the dining table still set with 3 chairs, the way it had been the last night we'd all eaten together. In the study, dust caught the morning light in slow spirals. His chair faced the window. On the desk lay a photograph of him and me on a job site, both in hard hats, our smiles blurred by sun. Beneath it, in his handwriting, build something that lasts, even if no one thanks you for it. I pocketed the photo. The investigation, Uncle James and I spent days tracing the Nexus West transactions. Each paper led to another shell, another lie. Vanessa hadn't acted alone. A senior partner, Dawson, had been feeding her information, trading inside data for kickbacks. Why didn't your father fire him? James asked. Because he needed proof, I said. That proof was now mine. The next board session was scheduled in 2 weeks. I had time, but I also had a choice. Use the thumb drive as a weapon, or as leverage for reform. I remembered what Dad wrote about not punishing people to prove a point. So I built a quieter plan. The confrontation. I called Dawson to lunch. Neutral ground. A small steakhouse where executives pretended they were still working class. He arrived in a tailored suit, confidence restored after voting my way. Aaron, he said, shaking my hand. You surprised a lot of people. Not you, I hope, I said. We talked business for 20 minutes before I slid a folder across the table. The top page bore his signature beside Nexus West's. His face went white. You've been siphoning funds, I said quietly. I could take this to the authorities or to the press, but I'm giving you a different option. Resign today, for health reasons. No severance. You keep your reputation. The company gets its stability back. He opened his mouth, closed it, nodded once. You sound just like him, he muttered. When he left, I paid the bill and felt nothing but fatigue. The stepmother. 2 nights later, Vanessa called. Her voice was too calm. You think you've won, but you don't know the full picture. What picture? Michael wasn't the saint you think he was, she said. He built his empire on risks that could have ruined you both. I cleaned the messes you never saw. If I wanted, I could take half of everything on moral grounds alone. Then take it to court, I said. But remember, discovery goes both ways. Silence stretched, brittle. Then she laughed, soft and dangerous. He taught you well. Click. The blue folder reopened. I finally plugged in the thumb drive. Audio hissed, then my father's voice filled the office. Vanessa is clever, but not loyal. She'll find partners to feed her greed. If you're hearing this, son, you've already chosen to lead. Don't destroy her, contain her. Let her trap herself. Give people like her a place to stand, and they'll build their own cage. He paused, sighing. If you can hear me, it means you've grown into your spine. I'm proud of you. Don't let revenge make you small. I stopped the recording, staring at the city through the glass. Revenge felt smaller than it used to. The board cleanup. Over the following month, I restructured quietly. Dawson resigned for health reasons. The auditors confirmed the Nexus payments and recovered most of the losses. The board rallied around the new plan. Vanessa, stripped of influence, withdrew to the mansion she could no longer control. The papers called it a change of leadership. No one knew the war that had burned underneath. But victory felt lonely. The letter I never sent. I wrote Vanessa a letter and never mailed it. You were right about one thing. He did cry before he changed the will. But it wasn't disappointment. It was grief that you'd never understand what loyalty meant. I forgive you because carrying hate would make me like you. I sealed it and locked it in my father's old safe beside the blue folder. The final lesson. Weeks later, I visited my father's grave again. The marble was cool under my hand. I read everything, I said quietly. I didn't use the recordings. I did it my way. Wind moved through the trees, soft as breath. I kept the roof on, Dad. When I walked away, the city lights shimmered on the horizon like towers still waiting to be built. 3 months later, the company stood steady. Profitable again, trusted again. Not because of numbers, but because people finally believed someone was steering the ship for the right reasons. Investors stopped calling to demand updates. Employees started calling me by name, not by title. I thought the storm was over. It wasn't. A letter from the past. One morning, Sterling appeared at my office door holding a small envelope. Your father left one final instruction, he said. He asked that this be delivered once the company was secure and the board confirmed your permanent appointment. The envelope was thin, handwritten in the same steady slant I knew too well. Inside was a single sentence. Check the second drawer of the old desk in the lake house. The lake house. The one my father and I built together when I was 18. Half a summer spent hammering planks, painting walls, and eating sandwiches on the dock. Vanessa had hated that place. That evening I drove there alone. The air smelled of pine and rain, the lake black and still. Inside, the furniture was covered in sheets, the way time covers everything we abandon. In the second drawer, beneath old fishing maps, was a small metal box and a key taped to its lid. Inside, I found a folded letter and a photograph. My father, younger, standing beside a woman who wasn't my mother, wasn't Vanessa. The letter read, If you're reading this, you've already passed every test I set. I didn't build the company to leave behind money. I built it to leave behind a compass. You needed to learn that justice isn't vengeance, that strength isn't loud, and that love isn't always clean. The woman in the photo is Angela. She was my first business partner, and the only person who believed in me when I had nothing. I couldn't marry her. Life took us separate ways. But I never forgot her. I created a trust in her name, the Angela Foundation. It's funded through the same blue folder you found. That money was never meant for you or Vanessa. It was meant to rebuild what greed broke in others. When you're ready, take control of it. Not as my son, but as the man I hoped you'd become. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the photograph, the wind pressing against the windows like a heartbeat. My father hadn't just been testing me. He'd been preparing me to carry something bigger than a company. The foundation. The next week, I announced the creation of the Angela Foundation for Ethical Development. It wasn't charity, it was legacy. Funding apprenticeships, construction training for underprivileged youth, and pensions for workers my father had once promised to protect. Reporters called it a surprising move from a corporate heir. I called it balance. Even Vanessa showed up to the press conference, wearing black in silence. When the reporters left, she approached me quietly. "You did what he couldn't," she said. "You made peace with him." "I didn't make peace," I said. "I just stopped fighting ghosts." She smiled faintly. He would have been proud. For the first time, I believed her. The epilogue. A year later, I visited the lake house again. The company was thriving, the foundation growing, and the city skyline gleamed with the kind of light that used to belong only to my father. I sat on the dock, the letter beside me, the water still and endless. When I closed my eyes, I could almost hear his voice again. "Stand tall, even if you're standing with nothing." I smiled. "I'm standing, Dad," I whispered. "And this time, it's not with nothing." The sun dipped below the trees, the lake turning gold, and for the first time since his death, I felt the kind of peace that doesn't need witnesses. Closing narration for YouTube. If you've ever been told you weren't enough, or watched someone try to take what's rightfully yours, remember this. Strength isn't about revenge. It's about restraint. Sometimes, the greatest inheritance isn't wealth. It's wisdom earned through pain. My father didn't leave me fortune. He left me purpose. And that has made all the difference.